Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the ECM Podcast. I'm Caroline Fontanier, and I'm very happy to host this series that will take you behind the scenes of new music on ECM Records. In this new episode, I'm meeting Norwegian singer, multi-instrumentist and composer Sinikka Langeland. For this interview, we met virtually to discuss her latest ECM record produced by Mathias Eick, Wind and Sun. Sinikka talks about nature, sounds and poetry. I first wanted to know how wind and sun had an influence on her writing.
Well, I also think that for this author and playwright Yunfu, he uses wind very often when he's describing something you can't describe about some spiritual things in a way. And of course, sun can also be, that's our real mother of living. But it's so open, and that's what I like with his poems also, that they are so, it's so filled with room and spaciousness that, you can dive into it with your own intuition and things.
Do you remember when and how you discovered Yunfu's poetry?
I think it was quite early. I read some of his poems, and I was also very interested in his essay, the Gnostic essays, because I was working quite much with religious folk tunes and compared them with Bach chorals, because the same psalms that Bach used for his organ chorals was traveling to Norway with Denmark into Norway, and it became a part of the folk tradition here. So people made their own variations of these psalms, and this I think was very interesting to put side by side. So I made together with Maria and Magdalena, that I also have Maria song I made in ECM. I made 5 recordings of this theme. So then I was wondering about spirituality and things like that. And so I was interested in this. But it was first now in 2019 that I met this actor, Anne-Marit Jacobsen. We had worked together before with poetry. She was reading and I was singing the poems with my music. She had worked quite a lot with Yunfu in the National Theatre of Norway. And I was searching, in fact, him because I was thinking of making some church music, but it ended up with these poems because she was asked to collect from all the collections to a book called Row My Ocean when he was celebrated when he was 60 years old. So I somehow dived into this process with her, and we developed then a performance called Row My Ocean. And then I thought, wow, this is so fantastic. This suits me so well, and I could like to develop this music also for the quintet. So it was a parallel working with making solo, and of course fantastic to be with her, who have worked so much with his poems and his plays also, and then go my own way with it, more with the music also.
And then you decided to dedicate a whole album to his art, to his poetry, and to how did you work with him on it? Did you work with him on it? Did you consult him? Did you play him the music before recording it?
He's so famous. So he's translated to, I think, like 40 languages. He's the most played playwright after Henrik Ibsen. So I was very surprised that I could talk to him, and we made a portrait together with him, but he never go to premieres. He never go to anything. I think he make one interview when he releases a book. So, he's very private, and because he has so much people asking him. But just to have this meeting with him, I knew that he loves dogs. So I took my dog with me, and the dog Alveng, the photographer that I worked with for many years, I had a feeling that they would somehow get a good contact. And he lives in an honorary what you call it? It's a house that very honored artists get for lifetime, close to the castle of Oslo. So we went there and we were in the garden and he met his children and it was really nice. It was really nice. So that was my contact with him, and of course he knew Anne-Marit also. He knows her very well because she had also made a lot of work with him.
Ro mitt hav, ro ditt lys til der vi alle bor. Ro mitt hav, ro deg fram til stand der vi møtes.
Putting music on poems is an exercise that you do a lot. It's a very difficult exercise. What kind of inspiration does it require for you? Are you reading this poem a million times before putting it in music? Or how does the inspiration come to you?
Yeah, I think that when I worked with her, we started to find out what is this about? What do we want to express? And I was very concerned about that. He had a kind of accident when he was a child, and he had an out-of-body experience. And he was very angry to the church because he thought that they didn't know what it was really about. They were just talking. That was when he was a teenager. So he went out of the church because he felt that he had a kind of inspiration. And we found out that we wanted to do something around that with birth and death and love and not love and ordinary life. So it was from beginning, birth to death. And I looked for poems that had this in it in a way. And when something talked to me, I start working. And sometimes it can be something like this, and sometimes you have to try and try again, and maybe that may be a melody from before. Can I use some part of that? That has this feeling that I want to tell. Sometimes put different poems together to build up some kind of suite to get the longer. But maybe that's mostly when I used it with the quintet, that I could have some more space for them and also some more longer compositions than I could have in this theater work.
Yeah. You're talking about birth and death, and that's true that it's very present in the poetry of Jon Fosse. There's also a very important place of nature in those poems, but also in the Norwegian and the Scandinavian culture. Life goes around seasons and nature. And I know how nature is important for you too in all your work. How big is it in your inspiration?
Yeah, I think, of course, because I moved here, I lived in Oslo, I lived in Paris, I lived in Helsinki. And then when I finally decided where to settle and find a house and work, it was very important for me to be in the forest. And I really need it. I really need it for getting this peaceful feeling inside myself, and listen to the forest sounds and the sounds of the birds, and just to see a moose now and then is such a fantastic inspiration. And I realize, because I also travel quite much, that how I am living and how we live in Norway, it's not many places you can do that anymore, because every country is so built up with houses, and people are living in small apartments. And of course, that's also can be a big inspiration to be in a big town. But here, the nature, and especially in the west of Norway, I also have a small house there because my father is from there, and that's also my connection to understand Jon Fosse, his nature, that the mountains are so strong that they decide in a way how you feel. Of course, it can be so dark and can be so before Christmas, you are so longing for light, but then you came to January, February, when it's really white, and here it can be minus 30 degrees. It's so strong, and it's light with the snow. And
because you've been longing for it, there's more gratitude for it when it happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are so happy when the spring comes, and then the summer, and so the seasons are so different. And I think it's
It's very inspiring.
Yeah, and that's also very nice to live in the forest and to be very much outside the cities, because you feel it more and you see it more.
Et lys en kan ta på og tar på. Et lys en heldig i hand.
I want to take a second to talk about your instrument. I mean, basically talk about the kantele. You're playing different kanteles on this album, some larger than others.
Yes, yeah.
How did you start playing this instrument, and what's your relationship with it? And talk to me about the different ones that you used in the album.
Because my mother is from Finland and Karelia, she moved to Sweden when she was 11 years old because of the war. But she always talked about that there was a special instrument in Finland called kantele. And my grandfather, he was a fiddle player. So we talked about it. And when I was around 20 years old, we went to Finland to find one. At first, it was more like adventure, to see what this was. And it was not so popular in Finland at that time. So when we asked, it was not easy to find it, but then we found one almost hidden in a music shop. And he said, you really want to have this? Yes, yes. And then it was a friend of me who wanted me to come on a tour, and she needed somebody to play kantele for children. I said, oh, are you sure? I have not played so much. But she said, it will be okay. And then I had to work more, and I went back to Finland to get some lessons. And after a while, it just became my instrument. And I had played piano before and guitar. And this was a kind of mix, you have the strings, but you also, and this was the big kantele, the concert kantele.
Okay. How many strings?
36 strings. And a system that make it possible to tune into different keys. But originally, I was also I felt that there is something missing here. And when I heard Arja Kastinen, she's a Finnish kantele player who has in fact made a doctorate degree on improvisation of the old kanteles that was smaller, the 5-string and especially 15 strings. She had, so I was in a workshop with her, and I got really, this is different. It's a very different way of playing. But of course, the big one is my main instrument, but I tried to get this 5-string and this 15-string to some pieces also, and especially this 5-string has some special strings that are made from old time. They say it was horse hair. Now there's a kind of, I think, imitation of that, but it gives a very archaic sound that I like very much. So it's like different colors also, these instruments, and different ways of playing. That is very inspiring for and especially when you play with jazz musicians, to have this element of the old way of improvising is also very, very nice.
Yeah. How many do you have at home? How many kanteles?
How many kanteles? Wow, I haven't. I think maybe 30 or something. But I'm not using them. It's somebody has given me, like my relatives in Finland. They made in a some course or something. They're not very good, but it's so nice to get them, and
amazing. And it's a beautiful instrument. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's very special.
Yeah. So you're talking about working with jazz musician. It's obviously my next point. We're going to talk about the band, but do you remember when you discovered jazz and improvisation, and when you wanted to incorporate it into your music?
Yes, I remember it very well, because when I was a teenager, it was a jazz club in the closest town. And believe it or not, but I heard Jan Garbarek in 1976. And it was just 14 people listening to him in the old cinema room. And I was just lost. It was something about him, and that I really thought this is something I have to do. But I had a long way to go before I came there, in a way.
Yeah.
And there was also Eilertsen, I heard, and Ratka Tonev, a very famous, fantastic female singer. So it was the time in the 70s where also amateurs and professionals and poets and everybody was on the same stage. So I also started to perform on these stages there, and heard, for example, also Hans Børli, this other poet that I have made music to. his poems. Yeah. So it's been, in a way, there together with my also searching for understand the folk music in the area and contemporary song. I was more like singing contemporary songs.
Yeah, but it's always been a mix between jazz and improvisation and contemporary song and poetry and traditional music as well.
Yeah, and classical piano. From I was 5 years old, I started to get lessons. So it's all been there, and I was always like, oh, I want to try this instrument and this instrument, and I was for a long time. Oh, you have to concentrate really on something. But now I can also see that it helped me when I'm composing, that I have always been so curious about instruments. So I know a little bit of many things. And that can be good when you are composing.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the band. You have a very special band of wonderful humans, wonderful instrumentists. I want to start, I hope I pronounce it right, but I want to start with talking about Trygve.
That's right, yes.
Tell me about your relationship. You have a special relationship.
Absolutely, yeah. We called ourselves like an arranged marriage that works, because it was Manfred who put us together for my first and I remember first time I went to his apartment and we tried out to play, and we went out to some festivals, and so we played duos and trio with Marco from Finland, and Anders Jarmin I also worked with even longer. I just heard him in '93 and called him for my second, and after that he has been my bass player. So it's very strong feelings after working so much together and traveling. And he also loves sauna. He's making his Helsinki songs, and sometimes he has come here with his, he has built it. He got a present, what do you call it, this camping wagon, this caravan. Yeah, they made a sauna caravan to him. So sometimes he came here and we use my sauna first, and then we travel with his caravan to a lake. I have also made a piece called Sauna Cathedral, and then we of course have this caravan with us, and we take swim afterwards. So it's really always an adventure to play and with Trygve, I have to say.
That's amazing. And then there's Mathias.
Yes, in fact, we were also releasing, I think the same year on ECM. I was asked to play in Finland. It was something like the Norwegian Queen and King should represent Norway, and they asked me if I could go there. And then they asked, could you take this young, fantastic trumpet player with you? So we had, then we played together with Trygve and him, and we also had some fantastic travelings in Finland that year. So they are also so busy. Sometimes he has been instead of Arve Henriksen, and sometimes Mats Eilertsen has been instead of Anders Jarmin. So this is a way we make it possible to do all the gigs, because sometimes it's not possible for everybody to join a special concert.
But on the recording, I feel like the match and the connection between Trygve and Mathias is very special, brotherly. I feel there's something extremely deep in their marriage of sounds.
Yeah. It's really, and I have seen a photo with Mathias and Trygve as teenager, and Mathias is somehow younger than him, and Mathias is almost just a child and looking up to Trygve. So it's been there for a long time, this friendship, and of course they also played a lot with Manu Katché and Iiro in Finland. Yeah. So they have a long story also to make this work.
And Mats and Thomas Strønen, also long-time collaborators of yours.
As I told you, that Mats has been like stand-in for Anders Jarmin, and also he was invited into my Sauna Cathedral project and in Mass for Blue Whale. Yeah, we had Mats and I, but Thomas, he was new because he he invited me into a duo CD that is not released yet. I think it will come on ECM. So, and the reason that I couldn't work with my old quintet was the pandemic situation. I started working with this and had them in thought, and then we couldn't play because the borders was closed. So make it possible to do these concerts inside Norway. I started with these musicians, and in the end, it became them, and I'm very happy about that. Yes, also.
Høyre du hjertet mitt komme, så la det gå igjen.
Can you talk to me about your relationship with ECM and to Manfred Eick?
I discovered ECM quite early, but I was not that kind of. I played quite much myself, so I was not that kind of person buying much CD. Before CD, it was these LPs, and I didn't buy so much. So I didn't have so much records from ECM, but I heard some of these bands. But it was first when folk singer Agnes Buen Garnås made a recording with Jan Garbarek. I thought, oh, maybe it's possible for me too. Before I thought it was absolutely not possible for me and what I was doing to join that company. And I was in a company, Grappa Musikforlag, with my first CDs. But then I felt so strongly that I wanted to work with him, that it would be so good. So I asked Jan Erik Kongshaug, the sound engineer, if we could record some demo and that if he could show it to Manfred. And I think he did it, but I didn't hear anything. And then I just took a decision that, okay, I have to write a letter to him. And here, are you interested or not? Because if not, I would do this music on another label. And then he said I could take my instrument and come. And we were in the old Rainbow studio. And I played a little bit for him. And we just found a good contact. And I think it was one of the most happiest moments in my life.
Sinikka, thank you so much. I don't know how to say thank you in Norwegian or Finnish. I don't know.
Yeah. Tusen takk.
Tusen takk.
Når hjertet en måne I kvelden regnet også der og fortellinger I kroppen fjellas linjer røsle langs himmelen der inne.
Sinikka Langeland, from her house in Norway, about her new ECM record, Wind and Sun. Thank you for joining, choosing, and listening to our ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I look forward to sharing more music with you in the next episode.